The goal is not to go deep, the goal is to be expansive. The product visioning exercise has to be done whether you believe your product is necessary or not. Find reasons why you have to say no instead of finding reasons why you have to say yes.
Alap was the former head of data and technology partnerships at Google.
Everybody has to align. So documenting the whys and why nots is very essential. When I pitch this product to somebody, how am I going to convince them that what I'm building is good? Get the data necessary for you to know what are you solving and how are you solving.
Where do I find my customers?
When it comes to your customers, you want to look at the one that you have easy access to. If a startup founder is looking for a business, they'll try and look for a small part of a large market, then try and grow into it. In the social media universe, getting people who could potentially be your customers is much simpler. The purpose of the product vision document is to tell you this is wrong, don't do it. Whenever somebody developing a product without a vision document, they're throwing money at a problem to try and solve the problem faster. The problem there is,
welcome to Behind the Feature. Today we're thrilled to have a guest who is a true visionary in the product, marketing and technology partnerships world. We're actually joined today with Alap Ghosh. Alap's actually a close friend and I'm super excited to have him on Behind the Feature. Alap was the former head of data and technology partnerships at Google India. He's having a career that's spanning across some of the most innovative agencies where he was actually the managing director at Jellyfish India, a global Google marketing platform partner. He's a visiting professor at the Illuminous Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. And he was a key leader at Google, as I've already mentioned. Throughout his career, he has navigated extremely complex landscape across marketing technology as well as partnerships. Today, we're actually going to chat with Alap and he's going to take us through a true product visioning experience and document. So I'm very glad that he has agreed to come on to Behind the Feature and share his expertise with you. Welcome to the show, Alap.
thank you, Diksha. This is indeed exciting. I've been watching Behind the Feature for quite some time now and being here is good fun.
So Alap, we're going to actually start with some absolute basics. Can you first explain to us what is a product visioning document?
Okay, so the exercise of product visioning is an exercise where you're trying to figure out whether your product is even needed in the world, right? Typically, when somebody goes through the process of thinking about, I want to build something, I want to build a product, I have a problem that I've seen, there could be a chance that you're the only person who's recognizing that there is a problem. You may have anecdotal information about whether that problem exists or not. Your friends, your family are reinforcing your beliefs. You don't really know whether this is a product that is needed in the world. There is someone else who's already built this product in the world. People recognize the value but don't want to pay for it, or if they want to pay for it, they have a value in their mind where you don't match that value. The visioning exercise actually demystifies all of these for you and make sure that when you go on to building the product and when you invest in building the product, you're actually confident that you should go ahead with it.
So given that this is an extremely important exercise, no matter one is for a startup founder because he's kind of starting a new product, or if it's an existing business and I want to launch a new product, how is it that the entire process is and can you take us through it?
So in my mind, between a startup founder and an existing company that's trying to build a product, the fundamental difference is the startup founder is alone or has probably a couple of people who are co-founders, and a company has got an entire team that's after this process. In fact, it's more dangerous for companies to go down this road because very often companies believe that solutions that they use, that they believe has larger application to the world, they will try and build that out into a product. Whereas the productization exercise itself, starting from visioning to building a requirement document and then market acceptance and so on, all of that is actually a process that you have to go through before a solution that a couple of people use becomes a product that everyone can use.
So can you take us actually through a process and the actual approach of how we can do this exercise?
Sure. So the product visioning exercise, the end goal is the product visioning document. But the exercise is fundamentally about asking yourself, is my product needed? Once I build it, will people accept what I have built as a solution to the problem I'm trying to solve? And finally, if that happens, does it have a future? Will people pay for it? Will it grow? Will it have a vibrant community of users around it that are supporting the product? And it's typically a 5-step process. I'll go through the process in detail as we go along. But fundamentally, if I had to give an example of what product visioning looks like, if we look at quick commerce, Zepto started at a time when we already had Big Basket and a couple of other players, right? why Zepto becomes an interesting story is because they started as KiranaKart, and their job was to make sure that every grocer has got the ability to be able to reach out to their customers exactly the way a big basket would, or big box retailer would start using quick commerce. Now, quick commerce as a category was something that didn't exist at the time. It was obviously there, but it wasn't as what we see it in
Yes,
today's
the 10
version.
minutes delivery.
So when KiranaKart pivoted to Zepto, they observed a lot of problems in the market, and what they observed fundamentally was that the vision of empowering, and this is what we typically call a pivot, the vision of empowering a grocer, a small grocer, a local grocer, has a lot of roadblocks. Grocers need to be technically educated. They need to be inventory aware, not in their minds or in paper, but in a system that other people can access. And in that, they realized that the Zepto model, what they've built right now, has more wings. And then started building around that, around solving a problem that makes them independent, makes people independent of local grocers, gives them a voice, but in a very different way, and starts giving people what they want in a very short period of time.
So can you take us through what is the first step when I start creating a product visioning? And maybe we continue the Zepto example.
I will actually switch between examples because there are many different ways in which people have thought about it. The 5-step process, I'll just quickly narrate the points and then we'll go deep dive into each. The first one obviously is vision setting. What are you building? Why are you building it? Whether it has a future. The second is deep discovery. So normally people call it discovery, and the word discovery is a little abused because discovery tends to be just this elongated exercise of collecting data, but not really meaningfully. But deep discovery is required. Then there is collaborative vision tuning, where you and the people who are going to be building the product with you are going to sit down and understand what exactly are you building. Once you come up with what you're building, the 4th step is to get market validation. Do people actually agree with the hypothesis that you have made, the solution that you're presenting? And finally, putting all of these in live documents that become your compass for how the product continues and grows in the future.
So on the first step, now that I need to think of my product visioning, and I have like, if we want to do an Ola example or an Uber example, how do I go about that?
Good. Let me actually use ride sharing as an example. We have lived in a universe where cabs have existed for very long. Like in India, we've obviously got auto rickshaws, we've got other methods of transportation. So transportation wasn't a problem that required to be solved. What did require to be solved was smaller parts of the entire process of getting down, getting into a transportation service, and then getting to where you want to be. For example, the pains that a customer goes through. Number one is availability, right? You go down there. I've spent literally hours waiting for transportation at a particular location with no sight, no visibility. There is active rejection. Then the vehicle you're getting in is dirty, it is messy, the driver is rude. You don't know how much time it's going to take because you don't know what route he is going to
take. Right now.
So there is a lot of ambiguity in the process, and the problem is that the anxiety that you face when you go in for a ride like that, of being late, of being messy, of having a troublesome interaction, having to pay more, all of these are pains that should be solved in a convenience economy. Right? When I say convenience economy, there are people who are willing to pay for convenience and not necessarily people who are who are trying to be, obviously people who will try to be economical, there are different mechanisms for them too. So the gain that you want is, number one, you want to be able to choose how you ride. If you know you're going to an important place and you've put on your best outfit, you want to make sure that you reach and you arrive the way you left your home. You want to make sure that you are choosing the kind of vehicle you want to go in based on the objective of where you're going. You want to make sure that the person you're interacting with is of a certain caliber. And that's something that's typically non-negotiable, right? So if you continuously keep getting people who are rough in their language, or just people who are bad drivers or unkempt vehicles, you want to reduce that pain and bring some predictability into it. You want flexibility of payment. Maybe you're not carrying cash, or if you are carrying cash, you still don't want to utilize that cash. You want other payment mechanisms that are ubiquitously available. So all of these are gains that you want to create. So the vision setting is, I'm here to solve a certain amount of problem. The problem I'm solving is a problem of convenience, availability, trust, and access, as opposed to trying to solve for urban transportation. Because urban transportation is already solved. This is how I intend to solve that problem.
Okay, so we've come to the problem. You've helped us saying, okay, this was a problem. We've identified by solving it. These were the gains. So is that the first piece of my product visioning document? Is I identify the pains, I identify the gains that I'm giving. What next?
Okay. Next is actually validating, right? For example, and you probably have come across a lot of people. We're fortunately in the social media universe where getting access to people who could potentially be our customers is much simpler. And it gets either simpler or more difficult as the number of users for that product reduce, right? So what you do in your market research process is you ask people for their pains and the gains that they're looking for. Number one is identify who is the type of customer you want to talk to. Is it a person with a certain income group? Is it across multiple income groups? Typically, if a startup founder is looking for a business, they'll try and look for addressing a small part of a large market and then try and grow into it. So you only concentrate on users in that particular segment and start asking them questions. What exactly is your pain point? What do you not like about it? Tell me what the last 5 journeys have been like, or just yesterday's journey. What was it like? What did you like? What did you not like? Was it the honking? Was it the dust? Or was it the fact that the AC was too high? What exactly did you go through? Right? Once you start collecting those, you have an understanding of the direction in which people want the problem to be solved.
Okay.
So one example of a problem being solved in a very different way is ride sharing versus car sharing, right? The objective is still the same. Both of them are transportation, but car sharing is where the driver is a sophisticated person. It's their own car. They are going through that maintenance process. They are going somewhere and they are carrying you along.
Right.
It's car sharing. Or car rentals is another way in which this is solved, where here's the keys, you drive yourself, go to the destination, give the keys back. Each one is a different type of a problem for a different type of a use case.
Customer segment.
No, same customer segment, right?
Okay.
So interestingly, it's the same customer, but the customer has different use cases. If I want to do a Mumbai Pune, I can still do Uber, car sharing, or car rental, right? I can do all three. But how do I want to travel? How soon do I want to get there? Do I want to drive? Do I want someone else to? All of those questions land up becoming. So sometimes luggage. How much am I carrying with me? If I'm carrying too much with me, I would rather rent.
Correct.
Than try and take an Uber, because Ubers usually have like giant tanks of CNG in the back. But if it's a diesel or a petrol car, you got the boot to yourself.
So in this case, I'm a new founder and I know my problem. Like I have an inkling that this is the problem that I want to solve. One, where do I find my customers? And also there's so many customers, right? So can you take us through different types of customer segments? Who should I concentrate on? And this is a part of the discovery phase, I'm guessing.
Okay. So let me broaden this and talk about the 3 parts of deep discovery. Obviously, customers is one part of the deep discovery. Competitors is another. And the third is the market, the industry in which you want to operate and the problem you're trying to solve. So it's almost like zooming out from the same lens. When it comes to your customers, you want to look at multiple customer segments, but the one that you have easy access to, either as a founder, if you're trying to solve a problem, it's okay to try and solve it only for your friends and family, right? That's usually going to be your test bed. But as you expand, you want to start looking at different income groups, obviously we've got genders. So are you solving a problem? So ride hailing, if you're trying to solve it for women, is a very different approach from trying to solve it for men. The type of profession that they're in, if they are daily workers who are going to their office, it's a different problem. If it is casual commuters, it's a different challenge. So if it's people who are intercity or long distance or have an appointment travel, all of those are different. So those land up becoming different segments. They also land up becoming use cases that you're trying to solve.
So to begin with, we should focus more on the core.
Yes. Where are you having most access? If you've got access to customers so if you're a college student trying to solve a problem, right? You're going to try and solve it for students because you have most access to students. If you're a working professional, you're going to try and reach out to working professionals. If you're a startup founder, there are a lot of startup founders who build SaaS applications. You want to solve it for people who you are most accessible and most close to, because usually the early foundational parts of your discovery and once you build your product are going to be your immediate network. So you start solving for those and then you start expanding. Obviously, you have to think about everybody, but your core ends up being the people most easily accessible to you.
Okay. And then the rest will be what? Incidental customers and the different.
So yeah, okay. I could break this down into 3 customer cohorts based on usage. The first is loyalists, people who who you believe will use your product day in and day out, who will depend on your product. And if there is service unavailability, they'll actually go to social media and start crying that something is missing. The second is people who will incidentally use your product. You will casually use your product, not really with focus, but they will use your product because they know that it's available and it's easy, right? And the third is people who are total edge cases. Those are the people that you have to start moving up the theoretical funnel of usage. That these are people who are using it once a while, right? So some people use Uber only for intercity travel. Otherwise, they'll use buses and rickshaws or local cabs. So for those three use cases, these are usage-based cohorts. Then you could have utility or use case-based cohorts. Like I'm going to office, I'm going to school, I'm going home, I'm going to visit my mom. Each one is different, right? So that's how you keep rotating your use cases. Let's switch to competition for some time. In case of competition, different people are trying to solve the same problem in different ways. We already discussed how we've got so obviously ride-hailing apps, car rentals and car sharing apps.
Correct.
BEST solves the same problem. The rickshaw union solves the same problem. Who are you competing with? There is the obvious competition. So Uber and Ola are obvious.
Correct.
Uber and the rickshaw union are sort of obvious. Uber and BEST are a little bit more distant.
Yeah.
Uber and the metro are a totally different use case. Right. So each one is a competitor, but a competitor in a very different way. And you don't necessarily have to solve the same problems they are solving, but you have to address that if those customers interpolate with you, how will they interact with your service? The third is the market, right? So when I say market, there are 3-4 different things. Automobile makers become competitors to Uber. Spinny becomes a competitor to Uber. Each person who's trying to solve the mobility problem becomes a competitor to Uber. Now, then you start looking at where the money is moving. Where are customers spending? Where are investors investing, and where is scale actually being achieved? Because those people are doing something right, and either out of necessity or out of preference, people are gravitating towards them. So these are the 3 observations of deep discovery for you to get the data necessary for you to know what are you solving and how are you solving for.
So we've done the first piece where we have the vision statement. The second piece is where we do a discovery phase where we understand the customer, we understand the competitor, and we understand the ecosystem to some extent, that where is it that we're moving. What next, Ala?
Okay. This is where, now that you've got all this data, you've set your vision, you know what you're building, you've documented that to a certain extent. You also now know who you're trying to solve the problem for and who else is doing it. Now you actually sit and combine the two and start fine-tuning, start putting, here is my customer, here's my ICP, my ideal customer profile. What does that customer look like? How many other customers fit into this segment? Of those customers, how much do they usually pay for this service? How much are they okay to continue to pay? Do they have to budget for this? So recently I heard that people actually have an Uber budget that they will spend for ride hailing. Obviously, these are people who have got fixed income and not visibility on whether they're doing. So here are my market dynamics. I'm combining all of these. What are the features that I will buy? So when I pitch this product, your elevator pitch comes here. When I pitch this product to somebody, what am I going to tell them?
Yeah.
How am I going to convince them that what I'm building is good, that they will want to use it? If I get feedback, how will I receive that feedback? What will success look like? You start defining all of these things during the vision finding. So now you're taking an expanded document. You're creating an expanded document where you had your vision set. Now with this data, you're expanding on what you want to do.
So can you give us an example of an elevator pitch?
So let me try and describe an elevator pitch. The situation in which you need to make an elevator pitch, again, is for 3 types of people. Number 1 is you want to talk to your customers about what you're doing. You want to talk to people who you want to prospectively hire and make them join your team or join your cause, recruit them to your cause. That's the second type of people. And the third is people who are going to put money in your business, investors, people who are going to give you references to other customers, people who are not directly going to interact with your business, but will have a stake in your business. To all these 3, what you want to describe is, what is the problem that you've identified? Or what's the opportunity you've identified? Who are you trying to solve it for? How are you going to solve it? How do you expect the market to receive it? And eventually, what does the future look like? What you're doing is you're painting a picture of if your product existed for the customers who want to use that product, what does their future look like? What does their future state look like? What you don't want to do is you don't want to describe features or you don't want to describe actions. You don't want to describe things like someone will open a mobile app to book a cab, because what you're doing there is you're concentrating on the piece of technology that you're creating as opposed to the utility of the piece of technology that you're creating or the service that you're creating.
So this is a part of the market validation phase, right?
The elevator pitch actually comes in collaborative tuning. So let me expand on collaborative tuning a little bit more, right? 5 stages of collaborative tuning. Number 1, everybody has to align that this is what we are doing, this is why we are doing it. So documenting the whys and why nots is very essential, right? The second step is you're going to start documenting who are your key customers, what are your key features for those customers, what are they going to do. So you don't have to go into depth about what you're going to do for them, but why will they use your service? In what scenarios will they use for your service? In what scenarios will they not use your service, right? You need to outline all of those things. Third, you need to talk about what's going to make it work, right? What does success look like? If it is a service that you're doing, people are paying for that service. How's your P&L going to look like? How are you going to measure your costs? How are you going to measure your output? The fourth part is putting all of this together and agreeing on which are the markets you're going to service. So the same customers, but which are the markets? Now, typically people think of markets as regions, but you also want to expand markets into becoming cohorts, right? So you could be solving a problem for people go into the office. So city flow, the bus service came that way. There is a predictable path that people want to go. People want to go from, say, BKC to Thane. They want to do that very often. So I'm only going to solve for that. But that is basically a long distance commute, bringing people from a distant suburb to a working suburb. That problem can exist in every city. So you don't necessarily have to look at the market being a city or a state. The market can also be a type of user. Right. And finally, you want to look at your success criteria. So what makes us successful? A number of people using it, market coverage, the amount of money we make. Obviously, all of those will be success parameters, but there are softer success parameters. How referred is our service? How much do people ride along with others? How do people introduce other people to our service? All of those also become success criteria. So start defining all of these. Again, the goal is not to go deep. The goal is to be expansive. Try and cover as much as possible. Write every thought down. You'll get an opportunity to clear it out, but capture everything so that everyone's come together to jointly create a vision. Now that you've done all of this, you go back into the market. Because now what you have, previously when you went for deep discovery, at that time, you were looking for problems and opportunities, gains and pains. You were trying to approach it from that way.
Right.
Now you have a solution. You have something to talk about. This is what I'm going to build, right? Previously, it was an idea that you had a vision. Now you've got something more stronger with your team that this is what we are going to build. So now when you go out there, you'll get validation. So previously, you were talking more problem. Now you're going to talk more solution. Right?
Okay.
Here's what we are going to solve for you. This is what we are going to do. Would you pay for it? Are you okay to put an upfront fee for something like this when we build it? So Kickstarter was basically that. Kickstarter's people who have gone through gone through vision setting, deep discovery, fine tuning, and now are looking for market validation. And there's no greater validation than somebody giving you money for your product, which you're going to build, right? So that's the fourth step. The final step then is to capture all of this and create a set of living documents. Now, this becomes your compass. Every time you believe that your team may be going out of whack or they may be misaligned, or if a new person comes into your team, how do you induct them into your thinking process behind why you got into this thing? These documents will then be documents that you will keep referring to throughout the entire product process. It becomes important enough that probably 5 years down the line, when we decide that, okay, something is happening, we are getting strained and we need to go back to our roots. You've got this set of documents that have evolved over time that are continuing to be your guiding forces and then eventually helping you stay aligned and stay on track.
So one is this artifact. What I want to get to is during the market validation phase, what if I find out there are certain things that I thought were the reasons or were working, and then I need to fine tune it. Do I then restart this entire process all over again?
Okay, so which is why they're living documents. You can break these problems down into smaller sub-problems. For example, if you are in the ride-hailing ecosystem, you found that there is a cohort you're not addressing. You're not addressing, say, seniors, right? You don't necessarily need to go through the entire process again for everybody. Maybe you want to do a smaller, quicker run where you're only doing 3 steps. deep discovery, collaborative vision tuning, and market validation only with that cohort. So
Okay.
you can run smaller, simpler sprints and exercises to get that data. Again, the vision setting exercise, rather the product vision document. The purpose of the product vision document in most cases is to tell you this is wrong, don't do it. Right? I know we approach it with a level of positivity, but in most cases you'll realize, like I know a lot of founders that I work with usually go to step 2 in deep discovery. They discover that there are competitors who are probably addressing every portion of this market.
Right.
And if we are not convinced that this is good enough, right? So this is deep discovery's objective is to stop you from lying to yourself that this is something worth
Yeah.
pursuing.
So that's what worries me. You know, I made this artifact and then I kind of start becoming obsessed with it and I start putting like these, I become blindsided by the actual thing that maybe I'm not solving a problem that's required.
But see, that's where you've got 2 steps where you're going out there and checking. The first, where you're going into deep discovery, is
Right.
when you're going out there, you're going and talking to real people, right? And the second is market validation. Again, you're talking to real people. They will give you. Now, obviously, there are certain founders who are extremely passionate and who will go ahead and build something regardless of what the world says. But everybody isn't Steve Jobs, right?
Or the Zepto brothers.
Or the Zepto brothers. And everybody does not have access to unlimited financing to eventually get something correct, right? In most cases, young product founders or even internal teams that are building products have a limited budget that they have to operate in. And if they're not able to move past a certain checkpoint with that limited budget, they lose sponsorship, they lose steam, they lose motivation. So get rid of all of that during the visioning exercise. Convince yourself and your team that this is worth doing. Your investors, this is worth doing. This is the right thing to do. Here's the evidence to prove it. That's what the visioning exercise is for.
And how is a product visioning exercise different from a product market fit exercise?
Okay, so product visioning exercise happens way at the start of your product journey. When you've got an idea in your head and you want to act on it, that's when the product visioning exercise comes in. Product market fit is further down the line. You've built your product, it's out there in the market, people are using that product, and now you're starting to face certain resistances or you want to open up more doors. That is when PMF comes in. So in PMF, you have a product, you have a lot of data about your product, not hypothesis about whether the market will accept or not data from customers who have problems, but real customers, your own customers. So the time when these two figure, when visioning versus product market fit, this time in your life cycle of the product is very different.
And is one of the reasons, one of the guests that they had come in, Movin Jain, and he had mentioned one of the things that a lot of product managers or product leaders don't think about is the distribution angle. You made a product, but you don't know how to take it to market. Is that a part of the PMF, or is that also something that you should include in your product visioning document?
So this goes into your product visioning document 100%. Because when we're talking about step 4, market validation, market validation is going to tell you about how people want to listen to this.
Okay.
So in deep discovery, you figure out how did you find out about this solution? How did you solve that problem? But during market validation, if you want to hear about this, what's the best way in which you want to hear about us? Right? So the questionnaires, rather the mental checklist of what do you want to ask, both during discovery and market validation, is this exercise.
Would you have any advice for product managers who are starting on this journey of creating a product visioning document?
Okay, so I will probably help you with a template that I use. So it's obviously a much shorter condensed version because the ones we have actually go in real time and start getting fine-tuned as we go along. But we have a skeletal template that I'd like to give to your founders and the product managers. But the one piece of advice that I want to give, and this may sound a little pessimistic, is the product visioning exercise has to be done regardless of whether you believe your product is necessary or not. Because if you don't do that, you're trying to find reasons to say no. You're not trying to find reasons to say yes.
Okay.
Because if you find reasons to say yes, you will find ample of evidence. And we live in an environment of desirability. Everybody you talk to wants to impress their knowledge upon you. So there is a chance that you may land up getting a very desirability biased response instead of a real one. Right? So find reasons why you have to say no instead of finding reasons why you have to say yes. If you still are convinced at the end of the exercise, then go full out.
I'll have I do want you to share from your career, a story or an anecdote of how doing a PVD, a product visioning document, versus not doing it. Like, what was the impact? And does it mean that if I've done a PVD, there's 100% success in my product?
Okay. So let's talk about somebody who went through an exercise of PVD and decided to not build the product. In fact, interestingly here during the PVD, because there were developers involved, there was even a prototype that was built of a product. They realized that the product that they were building would actually disenfranchise the very team that is building it within the enterprise in the first place. So as they built it, they asked themselves the question, who are we going to replace if we build this product? Who is currently solving that problem? And they realized that it was them. They were the people who were solving that problem. And by creating this product, they're actually making themselves obsolete.
Okay.
Right. And that was a big trigger for them to realize that maybe this is not the right time to do it. Unless we don't have a plan of what we are going to do within the company going forward, we can't bring this product to life. Does that mean the product doesn't deserve to exist? Of course it does. But it has to do a different job. It has to be a companion to them and not necessarily a replacement of them.
Sounds like an AI.
Interestingly, it was. The second is where a PVD was done, the PVD came out successful and the product failed. Sometimes there are other forces outside of your conviction, motivation, and financing of a product where you'll realize that the product doesn't exist. During COVID, there were two types of e-commerce companies that came out. One that was solving a problem for people who are at home, and another one that was trying to solve for people who are at home and trying to work, right? So a lot of Zoom clones, Zoom obviously went straight up, but a lot of Zoom clones were built at the time that were trying to solve for very simple problems. For example, creating a virtual whiteboard, right? It makes sense. You need a virtual whiteboard, but there are other ways in which this works. Also, collaborative whiteboarding requires a certain amount of sophistication and will for people to learn.
Correct.
And if so, Figma solved that problem. Jamboard solved that problem already.
By the way, they've sunsetted Jamboard.
There you go. So there are reasons why those products existed and people were comfortable using those products. So a third product that was attached to your core communication, your core conferencing system, and then training people on doing that sounded like a good idea. In practice was a very poor idea, because the people who committed that we will learn how to use it because we really need it actually didn't learn anything about it. Right? That's the second one. The third is an example of where a person did not do a PVD and went into product directly. Whenever somebody goes into developing a product without a vision document, fundamentally what they're doing is they're throwing money at a problem to try and solve the problem faster. The assumption is, let's skip the visioning exercise. Let's directly go into the requirements. What that will do is it will allow us to hit the market faster.
Correct.
The problem there is that the people who are building, like you get very engineering heavy products when you straight away start building, because then what problem you're trying to solve, an engineer is using their brain to try and solve it, instead of you having figured out that a customer of a user of the system wants a problem solved. So you'll find lots of features, you'll find feature overload, you'll find features that are insignificant but took a lot of time to build. You'll find a lot of infrastructure burden because you've overbuilt your product or you've underbuilt your product to go into time to market. Way back when a tourism company had actually done this, where the product's founder, rather the company's founder said, I will guide the product to success. Sure. But where that lacked was because that founder's vision was very founder centric and he was trying to convert a solution into a product. Right. So as he went through that exercise and he started developing the product, he realized that as he communicated his vision during the PRD phase, the use cases expanded so much that the product development cost inflated into crores, and he would have to find that much more time to actually recover all of that money. So went into development straight away, axed it midway because like I don't want to pay so much for it.
So no, thank you so much, Alap. This has been great. Like you shared how important it is, one, to have a product visioning document. Second is actually how to create it. And I think This is the kind of information. We are going to have the link for a template that Alap's going to share in the description. So please do feel free to use that. Thank you for joining us on Behind the Feature. If you've liked the episode, do like and subscribe. We come up with new episodes every second and fourth Thursday of the month. So do keep a lookout for some really cool, awesome guests coming up next on the show.